This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN Network. And joining me today is James Howard-Tripp. He is the chairman and CEO of StageZero Life Sciences. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is SZLS on the TSX. James, welcome to SNN Network. Great to have you on here.
Thank you, Robert. Good to meet you.
Great to meet you as well. So we're going to be diving deep today into StageZero, but I wanted to start off with a quick overview and history of the company, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, certainly. So we've been around for a while, working away in the darkness, as I guess you would often describe it, looking for that point at which you can actually sort of come out onto the main stage. If you look at what we're about, we're a molecular diagnostics company. We have a very unique technology we call the Sentinel principle. And essentially what we do with this is that through whole blood, we interrogate the immune system in order to see across a variety of diseases whether you have that disease. We can also stage it, which means we can see whether it's early, middle, or late. And some very early work that we did was also to look at the various drugs that you might be on, the various medications, and to actually help choose the most appropriate one. We've now moved into cancer, and we'll also talk about the COVID aspect. But essentially groundbreaking, and I think if you look at where we're going in this, we should be the first company in the world with a single test off of a single blood draw that would actually find multiple cancers, multiple discrete cancers.
So what would you say makes the company unique and different compared to your peers out there?
I think the area in which we work, the science is great. The reason that you stay with it is because the science is truly groundbreaking. And it took a while for people to get to accept that we actually could do this. Now it's sort of pretty much mainstream. We have peer-reviewed journal articles. You have all of that. But it is that right at this point, we can probably do something that other groups right now cannot.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Tell me what you mean that you guys can do things that other groups cannot. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, good point. So I'll focus on the cancer side, because we are at this point a cancer company, and so there are a lot of different technologies at the moment. There's cell-free DNA, there's circulating tumor cells. I think with a lot of this, great promise in where the technology may go, but as yet relatively unproved. And so the real utility of a lot of those, I think, is if you've already been diagnosed with cancer, and we know what we're looking for. And I guess the analogy we often use is if the cancer is a small red Volkswagen Beetle, and we're now looking for that in your blood because we know what it is we're looking for. We've got a pretty good chance of finding it. And we can do it without looking at tissue, and it works. But if we don't know that we're looking for a little red Volkswagen Beetle, and we're trying to find out off your blood whether you might have a cancer, it becomes much more difficult. With our technology, it's different to that. We do mRNA gene expression. And so we'll take a single sample of blood, and through that, we will look at a set of genes per cancer. And again, because we worked in multiple disease states, we work in multiple cancers, we do them at the same time. If we tell you that we believe you have this cancer, you have this cancer. And we'll always tell you the final diagnostic test is really that piece of tissue in front of the pathologist. But we would tell you that with very good certainty that you likely have this cancer. The other thing too is we can find it very early. And so if I go to the colorectal cancer side, the current test we have in the marketplace would tell you whether you do or do not likely have colorectal cancer. And again, play on the words, the definitive test, always a piece of tissue in front of the pathologist. But the enhanced version that will come through the program called Aristotle will not only tell you the discrete cancer, colorectal cancer, but also we have a separate test now for polyps. So this will be the first time that you actually have a discrete test for polyps in terms of where it is. And so it's that kind of thing that we can do. And we expect to have it commercially available later this year. It'll be 10 cancers off of a single sample of blood. So that's a first. And we, at this point, are the only ones that can actually give you the discrimination between the various cancers. It's not maybe a cancer, it's not maybe another disease, it's actually this cancer.
So I have to ask then, I mean, so it sounds like you currently have one of your diagnostics on the market currently, the colorectal diagnostic, correct?
Yes.
Got it. And where is it currently being sold?
All of our commercialization effort is into the US. And so we're a bit of a hybrid. We started in Toronto, Canada, but we've essentially moved all of the operation into the US. We're in Richmond, Virginia. And so you'll find all of our physical plant is in the US, and our testing is confined almost entirely to the US. We are in the process of looking at Europe and the process of looking at Canada, but it's essentially the US.
Got it. And look, I want to get into some of the COVID questions soon, because that's, you know, one of the ways I found you guys in some of your more recent news releases. But real quick, I have to ask, you know, what's some of your market penetration thus far? And I guess in essence, what's been your value catalyst, even before some of the COVID diagnostic tests that you guys are looking to bring onto the market?
Yeah, so it has been the fact that we're an early cancer diagnostic group, and so we run 3 tests, so colorectal cancer, but we also do breast and we also do prostate. And so it's been building out the various commercial channels. It's been getting the lab set up, building out the various commercial channels, and we're really just in the process of beginning to lift off. But all of it is really in preparation for Aristotle. And so Aristotle is what we call the single blood draw multiple cancers. And that will go. We're also partnering with a very innovative group of cancer clinics, and as you take it through, but so it'll make it, and they've actually built their programs around what it is that we do with the testing. And so it's a very neat way of doing it. And it's a very simple one in some ways. Colorectal cancer, for example, if you catch colorectal cancer early, you've got about a 90% chance of surviving 5 years. If you catch it late, you've got about a 10% chance of surviving 5 years. The vast majority of colorectal cancers are found late. Why are polyps so important? Because polyps are the very beginning of all of this. We know that the majority of the benefit we see in the early screening is finding and removing polyps, because the polyps then can't become cancerous. And so as you run it down through all of that, it's of huge benefit. We'll find that our test, for example, finds right-sided lesions equally as well as left. Stool tests don't find right-sided lesions. It's the right-sided lesions that mostly kill you. And so you can build on through all of this. So it's really neat technology, but it's all been building to this point. Get the tests in right, get the science fully validated, get everything ready, build out your commercial channels, introduce Aristotle, and run from there. And Aristotle is a massive opportunity.
I was going to say, I mean, look, it's not easy getting a diagnostic approved, especially in the US, you know? So, you know, I find it fascinating that, you know, you guys are still a relatively unknown company, and yet you have all these approvals for these various diagnostics, plus, you know, the coming Aristotle. I'm trying to put the pieces together here to understand, you know, I guess, I mean, has large pharma looked at you guys? I mean, what am I missing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
I have to ask.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We get asked very often. So one, we're the Canadian side of the border, where typically supporter companies like this is not the same as it would be in the US. Two, we've forever been cash starved. So as you're building it through, and so you've got to reach a critical breakout point. And from our side, we're at that critical breakout point. And in actual fact, the COVID aspect is going to accelerate all of that. And so we've developed the sort of internal phrase, "Come for COVID, stay for cancer," because it's bringing us a whole new set of clients that we will be able to extend out into. So from our side, this truly is the breakout.
So James, that was actually a perfect segue, because you alluded to it a little bit earlier in the interview, and then you also just spoke to it now. And the company has recently put out news on offering tests for COVID-19. Can you tell us a little bit about the test itself, whether it's an antibody or a swab or something else? And again, forgive my ignorance, because I'm watching the news and I assume those were the only two options. And then how is it different from other tests out there, the initiation of the program, and then the updates since then? So kind of just the full scope of the company's fight here against this pandemic.
Yeah, no, you bet. Us getting into the COVID testing is really a couple of things. One, we operate a CLIA certified high complexity lab. So that's what is in Richmond, Virginia. And FDA has mandated that the COVID-19 testing can only be done in labs such as ours. So it's a relatively small number of labs relative to sort of total number in the US that have this designation. So we were getting requests to see if we could help. PCR-based testing is what we do for a living. So it was relatively simple for us to look at it and then to decide to begin to do that. So we're offering the PCR-based testing, which, if you think about positioning it, would tell you that you have the virus now. So it'll tell you whether you do or do not have the live virus in you now. But we're also doing the antibody testing, and because you have to do both from a societal perspective, from a medical perspective. We need to know both. You need to know who has had it. You need to know the spread of the disease. And there's this huge debate on whether having antibodies, in fact, gives you immunity. On the other hand, isn't that what we're doing with a vaccine? And so one has to believe that there at least is that direction, that propensity, that it may very well play out. So therefore, as you begin to bring the workforce back into play, and for example, we're talking with the city right now. And the city is having a devil of a job having to figure out how they bring all the people back in again. How do they open it up? And this is where the antibody testing plays in. Now, we're also doing something a little different. Our view is that a single antibody test only gives you half the answer. If you get a negative, you get a negative. And it's something that's called a negative predictive value. And that will be very high. It's up around 99%. You get a negative, you're a negative, stay sheltered, okay? Be careful. You get a positive with a disease that has a relatively low incidence, which is what we believe COVID-19 still has. A single positive is not yet good enough that you can say to someone, we think you could go to the front lines in terms of working. You need a confirmatory test on that. And so we actually have a two-test system whereby if you're negative, you go as we talked about. If you're positive, it reflexes up, we confirm it for you, and we give it back then with a 99% certainty that the test is absolutely valid. And so that's the strategy people are beginning to look at. And we're getting huge acceptance of this, both as we talk to large healthcare groups, but your employers as well. Critical that you do it right.
Absolutely. So where are you guys currently at in the process of getting the tests out there, manufacturing? I mean, there's one thing to prove that you have a test that works. The next thing is now getting it out there and getting all their approvals.
Yeah, we're going live right now. So within the test, we work with a variety of partners. And so we have one test where the PCR test has an EUA at this point. The antibody test, the two components into the antibody test are in front of FDA right now. We're waiting for the EOs to come through. We know we meet all the criteria, so obviously there's good comfort that we will get what we need. And so we're in the process of beginning to go live right now as we prepare for all of that. And we have our first orders in. We're actually astounded at the need for this in terms of where it is. We're going to price very modestly because we think it has to be universally available. And so, no, literally, we're going live as we talk.
I mean, how is, I mean, you're on the front lines here, and you know, there's many companies working on a diagnostic for COVID, you know, whether it's antibody, swab, combination of the two. You know, what's kind of the economics of it right now? You know, how is it working? I mean, is it becoming almost commoditized? Because, you know, at the end of the day, everybody just wants a test that works, right? I mean, so what's it looking like?
Yeah, you know, our view on this, I think the pricing is still very attractive. If you look at what CMS did around the reimbursement a short while ago, they were reimbursing initially, I think, at $51, and people were saying they couldn't make money at that. And so what they did was they've doubled it. They're now reimbursing at the $100 level, and clearly at $100, people can make money at it. I think there's some room within that. We're watching tests priced out there at anywhere from about that range to close to the $200 mark with all of it. So clearly there's enough, I think, financial incentive in all of this. But as you look at it, typically it's a family that gets tested. If it's PCR only, you can understand doing a single individual, although you should probably look at doing the family unit. But if you're doing antibody testing, there's not good logic to just do the one individual in the family. You should be doing all of the family. So you've got to be able to afford it as a family with all of this. And I think the healthcare plans are scrambling to catch up. So a lot of this, as it goes through, is essentially cash pay. So it's working through all of those pieces. And the demand is massive in terms of where, if you think about, I think one number that's floated out there quite frequently is that in the US, we need to be at the level of at least about 3 million tests a day. Okay, we're 1/10 of that in terms of where across a lot of this. So there is huge need. And then as we talk to like large healthcare groups, they see the demand for testing increasing over the next 12 months, not plateauing and decreasing. Because as you open the hospitals up, as you open workforces up, you've got to test everyone. You can't now go into hospital for surgery without them knowing what your COVID status is. So someone's got to test those, and so it goes on. So yes, you don't have to make a huge amount of money off of this to it in actual fact be very financially beneficial.
Fantastic. Well, that's actually great to hear. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we get these tests far and wide, and at the same time, the companies that are doing the work, they get recognized for the work that they're doing, right? So with that, I mean, James, I also have to ask, what's your background? I mean, how'd you come into all this?
So I'm a lab rat. I started in the lab, started in R&D, and at one point I'm an organic chemist by training, and then went from there to business school. Decided that the business world was actually very fascinating. And then I've spent about half my life in big pharma and about half my life in the biotech world. And I've pretty much worked all over the world other than the Far East. So that's been a wonderful career. Absolutely nothing negative about it.
And are you the original founder of StageZero, or did you recently join the company? You know, what's your history with the company?
No, I'm one of the original board members. So I wasn't one of the founders, but I'm certainly one of the sort of founding group on the board side. And as we moved down, there was a point of my life where I actually started to step back a little bit from work, and it became the inevitable. Well, you know, as we were looking at commercializing in the US, that was a lot of my experience. So you get the question that says, would you mind taking this on for a while? And a while becomes a longer period of time. So that's where it is.
You got to love indefinite, right? I mean, so what are the 1 to 2, from what you can tell us, what are the 1 to 2 things investors should look for now moving forward?
I think we're in for some exceptional growth. It is, as you said, this is our time to step out of the dark and into the light. We are hugely unknown. The science is really good. The science is really good and really proven. And I think we're going to make a huge splash with Aristotle because it will fundamentally change the way we work with a lot of cancers. And that is just hugely satisfying. And then, the other part, we've clearly shown that we can pivot. I mean, it's an amazing time at the moment to work through. Nothing is as it was before. And so being able to figure that out and to actually move with it, we get a chance to do good, but actually it's also going to propel us into the next phase. It's all very positive.
So with that, where can my audience go and find more information about StageZero?
On our website, www.StageZeroLifeSciences.com.
James, thank you so much for joining me. I wish you guys the best of luck. Stay safe, and I look forward to our next chat.
Thank you. Same to you. Wash your hands.
Will do.